towards you.
Freaking missed you, dude.
I know. I miss you, bro. It's so good seeing you.
It is. It's good seeing you in person.
Yes.
Aaron and I talk usually like once or twice a month for like 4 hours.
Every phone call is at least 2 hours.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, deep dives. Well, everybody, welcome. We're recording. We're not live because it's not live streaming, but this is Drew the Catholic. Kind of a different episode. We're actually in Phoenix, Arizona, where Aaron lives, and we're at my grandparents' condo, and just gonna film a podcast episode because my dude has become a Catholic. So we'll probably talk about that and some other stuff. But yeah, so how you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good.
I'm doing really good. I think I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to meet your baby. Mm-hmm. Drew had a baby a while back. I just met her. She's cute. She's so cute. Like, so cute. Like, I don't know how, but she's cute. Oh,
yeah, it's the best, man. It's the best thing.
No, I met your child, and I'm glad to be here, dude. Glad
chilling.
to talk with you about things we love.
Yeah.
You know, it's just fun.
So Aaron and I, we've been how long have we been friends for? We met in high school.
The day I shook your hand and said, "Have a great day, Drew." That was probably like freshman, sophomore year of high school.
We were both so awkward and socially inept and like terrified of the world.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
That's all we said.
I don't think I think I like barely knew your name.
Yeah.
And like you just did that to me once, and then every time I'd see you, usually on the stairwell, like in between periods, like, "Have a great day."
Just intentional.
Just
you know, just randomly intentional.
I don't know how did that even happen?
I guess I think we just, I don't know. I maybe this is me being too optimistic, but I just was like, we just had a shared sense of like, yeah, like things are good in the world. Like, just have a great day.
High school sucks, but everything else can be okay.
Sucks, but you and I, we're good.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think from the beginning of our friendship, you and I kind of were walking a different beat. Like when everyone else was trying to go one way or be popular or whatever, you and I were like, we're both too lame to do that. So
yeah, we were too lame. Yeah, for sure. We definitely did not have the social chops to do that.
We got to find something else.
I think it was our love. I don't know. I hope this isn't like tooting my own horn, but like we were very curious people. I think we naturally are just like want to discover and know the truth. And that'll be very relevant later on in our life.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. High school is rough when that's your mindset too. Because like for most people, like, I just want to like be cool, have more like Snapchat streaks and stuff. Oh god. And you and I are like, what's the meaning of life?
Literally. But then also like, dude, that girl was so cute.
Yeah, that was part of it. But she doesn't want to date me, so it's
for sure. So let's talk about what's the meaning of life.
Yeah, right.
Let's go back to that.
Clearly, it's not women. So yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So we met in high school.
Yep.
Aaron, you've been one of my like lifelong friends, which is what's really cool.
Yeah. Consider you one of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been cool to like see our awkwardness in high school evolve into like men, then married men, Catholic married men. But when we met, you weren't Catholic. I wasn't either, I guess, for the record, which you all know that.
Yeah.
But you were going to, was it, what church were you going to? You went to the campus like right off Pima, right?
Yes. So this was.
What church is that?
Was
that CCV? Yeah,
Christ Church of the Valley in Arizona. Yeah. They're the biggest one I guess technically, they're the biggest one in Phoenix for sure.
Put all the satellites together.
Put it all together, yeah. They're huge. And so I went there for pretty much my entire high school career.
Yeah. And then we went to a charismatic church together for a while.
Yep.
We went to SBC youth group a lot together too, didn't we? Did you? Yeah, you went to there sometimes.
We had a good senior year was the second half of senior year was the only good thing of high school for me at least. Truly. And it's because we just had like this group of good guy friends. We loved. I think it was a unique moment of like we understood the importance of Christianity.
Right.
We understood the importance of like we need to like work hard to be good people, not in a like legalistic way, but a way of like we actually need to try, live this out.
Right.
So we went to SBC and we met a lot of like-minded people, and I think that for me formed a lot of my understanding of like, this is not just a hobby.
Yeah,
something
no,
new.
I agree. And that was our youth pastor, Jason. I think it was a lot of that. He was like super serious about, I'll never forget, he had a sermon where he's like, imagine if I like came up to you and asked you like, hey, I'm having trouble with Facebook. Can you help me? And then right when you're about to help me, I like walked away and said, okay, thanks. And like didn't listen to you.
Yeah.
That's how most of you approached Jesus. He like pointed out to the audience and they were like, oh, bro.
Yeah.
Because that was when I was like, okay, I know that if I'm going to be a Christian, I have to take this thing really seriously. And so then for me, that became wrestling with questions about like the existence of God and apologetics and stuff.
Yeah.
For you, it might have been different. I'm not sure. But I think I agree. But both of us started to really be like, hold up now. This isn't just like, let's go to youth group and like find the cute girls that might want to date us. It's like, this should be.
Might have brought us there.
It might have brought us there.
It didn't keep
us there.
Mostly because we didn't, didn't
no luck,
get any dates.
No luck, yeah.
But I agree. I think that we understood the ramifications of what it means to believe in God.
Right.
And a Christian
like that's an
God.
all-encompassing life or death thing,
Yes,
if it's true.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be treated that way.
Right.
So I'm thankful for that. That we had that shared viewpoint that we also shared with other guys. And so, our friendship has been built on really, I don't know, I'm thankful that our friendship has been built on that.
Yeah. I mean, all things considered, on the Catholic end of things, we had some pretty good formation aside from maybe the things now that would be like, oh man, I wish I would have known what I know now.
Yeah.
Like, we probably had it as good as we could have.
Yeah.
A lot of good mentors and stuff.
Yeah, I'd say so. And then, I don't know where you want to go, but it just feels like then, I don't know if I should say the church out loud.
Up to you.
I won't say anything bad. Antioch Community Church, they're great. In fact, I would argue that they probably have one of the, like most churches try to get down to the essence, right? The basics, like what's the gospel, what's this, what's, all that. But they treat it in such a way that it's like, no, I don't care if I need to be, like if, like what am I trying to say? Like the harvest party that a church throws every Halloween. Instead of calling it a Halloween party, it's a harvest party. They don't care if it looks good, if it sounds good, if it has good social media presence. Like, they really do care about reaching other people. And I think that authentic heart.
Yeah, the relational quality of that church was really good.
It was powerful.
People were really tight.
Yeah, they really were. And they were inviting.
Yeah.
And they really just wanted,
That's why we got accused of being
Jesus.
a cult a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah. I'm not going to say a joke. Yeah.
So,
they were pivotal in they were
well, I think that really launched you in a missional way, though, right? Because, I mean, you went on a mission trip with them for a while. That's where you met your wife.
Yes, I did. In Indonesia.
Yeah, in Indonesia. Yeah. So that launched you, at least in like in a missional way. I was already cynical at that point because I had some bad experiences there, which isn't reflective necessarily of the church itself, but a few people that were there at the time. Certainly.
Every church has them.
Yeah, every church has their jerks. No, I'm just kidding. He's not a jerk. It was just a disagreement about stuff. At the time, I wasn't Catholic, and now I am, so it's even funnier. But what would you say? So both of us grew up Protestant. We were friends for a long time. Mm-hmm. I know for me, this came on my map because of my theological studies. There's always this looming question of like which theological track is the closest, and then that led to research and discovery, and then like the looming doom of like, oh gosh, what if they're right? I think it's different for everybody. Like for me, it was super booky and heady, and it was like a long time coming. What was it? What do you think first piqued your curiosity of like, what is this Catholic thing? Because I think everyone has a point where they're like unaware of it, or they don't care, or maybe they hate it and don't understand it, and then something kind of like makes them reconsider. Do you remember what that was?
Well, I can vividly remember in high school, my youth pastor, Luke Wright, shout out. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but you're my dog. He's great. He wasn't Catholic or anything, but he had a very profound appreciation for the ancient church. And so he had a sermon one night of where did we get the Bible, right? And I remember, I don't remember much of the sermon or what he went over, but I do remember in the beginning he asked, like, what do you guys think of the Catholic Church? Like, what do you, and I just remember having this potent, like, oh, they're not even Christian. Like, they've messed things up. There's some kind of weird extra, like they're not the core, Christians that Paul, Peter were,
right.
And I remember feeling that way. And by the end of the night, I think I had come to appreciate, oh wow, like without them, I remember him saying, without the Catholic Church, we wouldn't have the Bible. Mm-hmm. And that's very true.
And you're like, oh man.
Yeah. And so that was like maybe like junior year of high school. And so I remember that. And that would probably be the sentiment I had up until, I mean, I can't even really remember. I think it's kind of funny. I really think that, so Antioch, the church that I used to go to, they have a discipleship school. Mm-hmm. And so it's a formation class. You know, you either go once a week or 4 times a week. If you really, daytime, really serious about it.
That's what I did.
Yep.
I didn't make it. I didn't make it, bro.
Well, I did. But the funny thing is I came out of that like, oh, I need to become something other than like a non-denominational, like evangelical
like, no,
Christian.
That's not what we
right,
wanted
it's
you to
hilarious.
do.
And they did everything right. They're like,
Yeah.
this is like the importance of scripture,
Right.
praying,
Right.
spiritual things. And they had us read books. And one of those books was The Celebration of Discipline, which I remember you actually gave me.
Dude, Richard Foster. I'm surprised they put that in there because when I went through D school, I brought that book up and they were like, what is that garbage?
Are you serious?
Well, but
I had
like
a great
different
teacher
people
then.
were leading for you, I think. So it
Absolutely.
was a totally different approach, right?
Yeah. The guy who led it was he understood the importance of we need to be theologically sound.
that Kyle?
Kyle Roeder.
Okay, yeah,
Kyle
yeah,
Roeder. Yep, another shout out. Love that man. He's great.
I had a kid.
Yes.
Bringing my boy Richard Foster in there. That's awesome.
Which led to, Dallas Willard, Divine Conspiracy, all these great guys who showcased, and the part of the book that's relevant is that there's a chapter on solitude
Yeah.
and silence. And he's going over the importance of what it means to just be with God. And it was such a beautiful concept that I've never really like meditated on or thought through before. And he's referencing all these now called saints,
Right.
who's Interior Castle? Who wrote that?
Saint Teresa of Avila.
Teresa of Avila.
Yeah.
He mentioned her a lot. I think he mentioned Saint.
Probably, is it Saint John of the Cross?
Saint John of the Cross. Yeah, Saint John of the
Dark
Cross.
Night of the Soul.
Saint Teresa of Calcutta. Like he mentioned these people who, like he kept bringing them up, and he would bring up other denominations too. But like, I feel like it was the Holy Spirit emphasizing these people specifically they got it, they understood it. And they had what I want, that powerful relationship with God that is unmovable.
Yeah, really crazy too.
Right.
Like Saint Teresa of Avila, like super, like to use a Protestant term, very charismatic, right? Like literally levitating, having like ecstatic experiences of God.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Antioch being a more charismatic church, I was like, that we should all want this. Like, guys, like these are the right people to look at, right? And they weren't. And then I found out later, like, oh, these are all, like, within the realm of apostolic successive churches. These are mostly Catholics, Orthodox, or anything in between. And I was struck by that. So that was maybe the first introduction to like, okay,
they can't be doing anything wrong.
Right. These spiritual
wrong,
masters are like, they got it.
Right.
So like, if we can know them by their fruit, and this is good fruit they're producing. Then there's something there. So I think that really shook off this really, just dumb idea that Catholics aren't Christians or shouldn't even be considered Christians. And it just opened the door to the possibility of it.
So from there, you went from like in high school going like, no way, like not even same category, to now going like, whoa, some of the best Christians were Catholic. What was the next like milestone?
Glad you ask. So it's so funny. Like it's these Protestant people that really jettisoned me into the Catholic Church. So Tim Mackey of the Bible Project, amazing scholar,
really good organization,
amazing scholar,
really
like,
good stuff.
Great,
they were a big
Bible
part of my
Project.
story.
I recommend it. Go watch it. They're amazing because he emphasized, and really his whole PhD and the program he went through is on how this is a Hebrew Bible, right? It takes us away from our 21st century American lens and makes us put on these first century Jewish glasses of how did they read the Old Testament? How did they then look back at the Old Testament, right? he walks you through the history of it all. And it was potent and profound and symbolic, and it just was amazing. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I want to read like this.
Right.
And I found out slowly. I think you kicked it off with Pints with Aquinas, Matt Fradd
Our boy,
interviewing
yeah.
Brant Petrie. You guys are great. You guys are, vital in my conversion. So thank you. And they kicked it off with the Marian dogmas, right? And so Brant,
that was like old school episodes too.
Yeah,
that's
it
like
really was.
pre
That was
cool
2019, I
YouTube
think.
studio. Yeah,
It was
that's some
awesome.
old stuff. Yeah.
And so Brant is going over. Brant's also a Jewish Hebrew expert,
Yes.
right? So
Really,
very similar
really
to
big.
Tim Mackin. I was like, oh wow, this is great. And so it was very convincing. And he's using Old Testament scripture,
Right.
typology, New Testament, to give evidence to the Marian dogmas, right? To bolster their claims. And I'm like, wow, this is insane. And it kind of, and then the second wave, the second door to finally swing open was the one about, that they read the Bible holistically. And Tim introduced me, not personally, but like he introduced the idea that that's how we should be reading it. And I'm like, I want to read it like that. And the Catholics read it like that. That's how they've always read it. That's in
all
fact
the
what it was
senses of
intended to
Scripture.
do.
Right, right.
So Tim just didn't take that logic far enough, I would say. Like he just didn't see how that implicates, us today in sacraments. And
I feel like that.
those things.
I feel like that happens a lot. Like I think of like N.T. Wright for
Yeah.
me was what Tim
Yeah.
Mackie might have been for you, and I really respect him too. The Bible Project makes a lot of that same scholarship accessible. But yeah, I feel like some of these guys, and it's no fault of their own necessarily, they get so hyper focused on their discipline academically of like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be a first century Jewish expert, and then see how that applies to the New Testament, that like all their mental space is there.
Right.
And so then
Yeah,
then making
they're
the
there.
bridge of like, what does that imply for me today?
Right.
I don't know that that's even on their radar, not because they're dumb, but because they're so hyper focused on what they're researching,
Right.
where that's
Right.
like, that's not even really a question necessarily.
Yeah. And I guess it wouldn't really be unless you are. I mean, Tim was a pastor at one point, but unless you're like the head of a congregation, you're not teaching students. You're leading people of all different
Right.
degrees of intellectual capability. So, but anyway, I think it was just really cool to finally see that the Catholics, they're not. Well, one, they're Christian. Two, they're spiritually rich, and three, they're freaking smart.
Yeah.
Like they are smart. I was
Yeah.
blown away by Brandt's presentation and clarity. And like, any theologian or scholar can sound like that, but it was just this cogent way of explaining like Old and New Testament.
Right.
He had the perfect bridge. And I guess that was really important to me. Because like I felt like no one ever said the Old Testament was unusable or not needed today. But it just like they would refer to certain verses or passages that you sound very New Testament like and were easy to put into a sermon.
Right.
Or, like
Right.
the whole story. And even David, they would emphasize that. And it was very convoluted and
Right.
not pieced together in such a way that it could flow into the New Testament.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
Brandt and now a lot of books on biblical scholarship have shown me that's just how it should be read.
They fit together, like they're truly married,
Right.
like in a really deep
What's the
way.
Augustine quote? The old is
Oh, the old is revealed in the new,
and the new is concealed in the old.
Yeah.
Right. It's perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's. I mean, really, that was the thing. And I remember seeing this in college, like, not the first or second year. Those were like first or second year theology degree was like getting your feet on the ground and like figuring out where you are.
Right, yeah.
And then like really like my third year, I was like, oh man. And that's when I was introduced to N.T. Wright, and it was just
Okay,
like the whole
yeah.
thing comes alive, and you're like, oh, this whole thing, over 2,000 years of authorship or close to it at least, is like so cohesive.
Yeah.
That no human person single-handedly could have
certainly.
done it
Right.
with 66 books. Like, J.K. Rowling can't even get the plot holes out of 7 necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, really
Right.
good book, Harry Potter, but like it's not perfect.
Right.
But the scriptures, the cohesiveness is like is remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the intentionality of it And obviously, like, oh, the prophets obviously knew scripture. Well, sure. But like for some of those themes to be echoed so beautifully about what happened before, but then so fulfilled in one person in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's remarkable. It's really remarkable. Yeah, that was the big thing for me. It became like about Jewish roots, like who has the most Jewish interpretation. And I think the Catholics, oddly, were like, well, we've just been doing these things because that's what we've always done. And like until people like Brant Petrie and Scott Hahn, I don't know that many Catholics have recognized how deeply Jewish the Catholic roots are.
Right. Yeah.
They've just been like, well, this is what the apostles did. We're told, so we just keep doing it.
Right.
And then we like look at the context of the New Testament, and we're like, that's a deeply Jewish thing that we're doing. Like if the Eucharist is a representation of the historical moment of the cross in reality for people in all times and places, that's like par for the course what the Jews thought the Passover was.
Right.
And like medieval Catholics would have had no idea about that. But they're like, well, this is what we do.
It was just assumed into their theology.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
You could probably see traces of it even.
Oh, totally.
But they may not have
I think the Jewishness of the faith was forgotten, but the content of the faith was never lost, if that makes sense. Like we're like in a phase of academic movements where we're realizing, oh my goodness, all the things we've been doing as Catholics are deeply Jewish. And that's to our credit,
powerful.
right? That's like to look at the New Testament and be like, oh, this is what the New Testament has to say about authority in a Jewish context. We do that because they did it.
Right.
The sacrifice, we do that because they did it. Like all of the things, I mean, really the old is fulfilled ultimately in the new in a really beautiful way.
That was and still is one of my favorite things is that it is typology, but this idea that God, the way that he would reveal himself to his people when they would go astray is by things that they knew before, right? So he would do the same thing in a way. So it was a way to signal to his people that he is here definitively.
Right.
So same way, why would that change, right? Like it was Jesus did the same thing in a new and different way, but he did them so that his followers understood. They picked right up on it.
Yeah, like baptism, right? Like God, the Spirit is hovering over the waters and creates the earth, and it was good. And then the earth gets bad because of sin, and God floods the world and recreates the world with the dove flying into the ark as a symbol of hope. And then all of Israel crosses the Red Sea through water into a new birth. And then through the Jordan into the promised land. And then the prophets baptize people for their healing, and then Jesus is baptized, and then ultimately all of us are washed and baptized. And,
it's just, I don't know, it just makes too much sense, right? And so... And people could agree with that, right? They can say, yeah, that makes sense, but why be Catholic, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense in like a theoretical, theological way. But like, why does the rubber have to hit the road?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why can't I just read it like that and just stick to that, right? And I think that leads to the next part of like, okay, well, then the weird things that Jesus says that are weird and don't make sense to us, they need to make sense.
Right.
And so the biggest one for me was the Eucharist. Right?
John 6?
Yeah. It was just this passage that was weird. Like he is actively trying to get people to believe that it is his body and blood. He's not like trying to have a parable and say, sorry, no, it's not actually my body and blood.
What I really meant
is he's like, no, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood. Sounds crazy. Like if I said that to you, you'd be like, bro, get out of my house.
You know what the best part about that passage is? And we just realized this recently talking with Stephen about it. It's not just that doesn't follow the format of parables. There are no parables recorded in the Gospel of John. Period.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Like you look through the whole Gospel of John. And all three of the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there's all sorts of parables. And usually he says, the heading will say a parable of, because Jesus tells a story and then explains it. And usually with all the people, he says, those who have eyes see, and yada, yada, yada. And then the disciples are like, we don't get it. And he what I really meant was this. And with the Eucharist, it's not just that he just doesn't follow that format, so it's true. It's that there is not a single parable recorded in the Gospel of John, period.
So John recorded this.
Yes.
Because,
it's the only gospel that has that clear of a discourse on the Eucharist in that sense. And it's also the only gospel that no parables are recorded in. So, like, either that is the only parable in the Gospel of John, which seems weird.
Seems a little,
or he's being very clear and literal,
Yeah.
Which John
Jesus
John is
clear and
doing,
literal.
Which makes sense, right? Like, John was written later, than the other ones, and he has a very clear theological agenda, like, whereas some of the other ones might have been alluding to Jesus' divinity, and even things about, like, the institution of the Lord's Supper and all that. Yeah. The Gnostics were already, like, even in the times of the earliest church, trying to take that. So St. John would have been aware of some of the earliest challenges and been, like, very clear theological agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a theory, I guess, but I mean, it seems to hold up in the rest of the writing. But yeah, there's no other parables in the Gospel of John.
Wow. Well,
Isn't that crazy?
That's I had no idea about that.
So when you say that to people, they're just like, "What?" And then I flipped through it.
Hold on.
I seriously did. I got a Bible and I didn't like read the whole thing, but I skimmed it and I looked at it and I was like, "There's really not." I heard it and I was like, I didn't believe it. And there's not a single other parable in that gospel.
I mean, okay, so
isn't that crazy?
Well, and that's perfect because I think
how convenient for
us, right? Well, I think it just as I'm learning these things, as my understanding's growing exponentially so, and as my I'm getting walls knocked down and just things I believe that aren't true about Catholics knocked down. It was like a runaway train. Like, it just kept getting faster and faster. I was like,
that's such a good way to describe it.
I kept saying to myself, this makes too much sense.
And you're just like looking at it like, there's no way. I'm not doing
there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, it makes too much sense. Like, okay, and this is where I don't know if this is good or bad, but I dove into, like, apologetics videos on YouTube between Catholics and Protestants because I was like, there's got to be at least some balance. Right. Like, okay, maybe the argument's not as strong as I thought. Someone's got, Protestant or whoever.
Yeah, there's no like silver bullet maybe, but maybe there's something that can reasonably allow you to hold on to Protestantism.
Introduce Swansona. Swansona,
my
if you're ever
boy.
Gonna watch this, I love it.
We should tag him. I'm friends with him on Facebook somehow. I don't know him.
I don't either, but he's great.
We'll tag him. We'll shout him out. The Eliakim argument, is that where you're going?
Yes, because
so
the Eucharist was weird, right? Like that. But that one was kind of easy to get over, and I thought to myself, well, shoot, if they're right about this, I want Jesus. So I want Christ here and now in
the Eucharist,
fullness, in the Eucharist. Like, that's him, not just part of him. It's his body, blood, soul, and divinity. I wouldn't have described it like that at the time, but I wanted it. And I'm like, okay, what are the other objections I have then? Like, if I could knock those down, then I'll consider it. But the top one was the papacy. I was like, okay.
That's a big one.
I didn't even know what it was, really. I was like, what is this? What is this? Why are people so caught up on infallibility? I didn't even know any of that, right? So I'm reading more about it, and I'm like, I see why this is a big deal. It's actually the most striking difference between Protestants, Orthodox, and Catholics. Like, if this were not solved, but like if they all agreed on this, there actually wouldn't be denominations.
Right.
It would just be a bunch of Catholics who maybe disagree on some other things that aren't doctrine. And I was just, so this was a big one. So I looked at this for a long time, probably like 9 months to a year of like, wow, this is powerful. And I wanted the best arguments of both sides. So Swansona was, I hope I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
That's his Eliakim typology was huge. Because he's an ex-Baptist, right, that converted. Yeah. So he's got the Bible knowledge down. And that's what he used to showcase the papacy.
And he mostly used Protestant scholarship to demonstrate.
Right, yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with the Eliakim typology, so if you go read Matthew 16, Matthew 16 is where Peter is given the rock and the keys. And the way that Jesus says, you are Peter, upon this rock I build your church, what you bind, no one will loose, what you loose, no one will bind, really closely mirrors Isaiah 22 when God gives Eliakim the prime ministership of Israel.
Right.
He gives him the keys of the Davidic kingdom and says, what you open, no one will shut, and what you shut, no one will open. Which, by the way, is also mentioned in like Revelation 4 or something, or is it Revelation 3?
Yes.
Yeah. showing that Christ has the keys, like
And
he's the
saying,
king,
right.
which is proper to him. And then that shows that link is really clear in the authorship of the New Testament. But he basically makes a typological link between the prime minister's role in the Old Testament as the holder of the keys and the absence of the king.
Right.
And well, if Jesus is the Davidic king, and this is the kingdom of Israel, who's the key holder in his absence? Yeah.
Christ clearly left. He ascended. That's very clear.
Right.
I think every gospel records something, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not Mark. I don't remember. But they're very clear on that. And so it just seemed like Christ, it's not like this argument, he's extrapolating this from bits and pieces throughout just the whole text. Christ literally is quoting from Isaiah 23.
Yeah.
So like there's a purpose that he's doing that. Like why is he doing that?
Right.
Like it's a weird thing to do. Why hand the keys? What authority is he giving Peter? And so that's when I dove into the history. I'm like, okay, how did this look? How did they understand this historically? This is where it got the diciest for me in terms of like, maybe I don't know about this Catholic thing. Because truth be told, like the historical evidence for the papacy isn't, I'm not going to say it's not strong, but it's just not as strong as you think.
Especially the first 200-300 years, you would want it to be like way more like heart.
So I
on
understand the
on
Protestants
the paper thing,
that are like, it should be, like we should be seeing this. I'm like, I see what they're saying, but it's still an argument from silence. It's still not. It's not. Which,
like in times of persecution, the last thing you want to do is tell your enemy where your leader is.
Right.
So they're not going to talk a lot about the Pope until Christianity is legal.
Right.
Which is odd because right around the time, like not directly after, but pretty quickly after, within 100 years after the legalization of Christianity, you start to get some of the really high initial papal claims.
Well, Ignatius of Antioch, he has. It's
Irenaeus, yeah.
Who's the one? There was someone on their way to getting persecuted or getting martyred.
That's Ignatius.
Ignatius was on his way. He's writing letters to the churches on his way there.
To Rome, yeah.
Yeah, and the one he writes to Rome, everyone thought this was like the silver bullet against the papacy. They're like, oh, he wrote just a nice letter saying, I commend you, church, saying nothing at all about any presbyters, any priests, obviously no popes, like anything that would have any association with traditional Catholic authority. But I mean, Trent Horn, another guy. I'm just naming all these people. If I ever meet any of you, I'm gonna be happy. But you're great. You are all pivotal in my conversion. But he showcases how this almost gives credence to that.
Right.
Because this man is on his way to get martyred. They're clearly getting persecuted. He's on his way to get killed. And so if he is gonna write to the head church in Rome, like, oh my gosh, like. Of course you wouldn't say a name. You wouldn't give out names or anything like that.
To the Pope, addressed at 1234 Main Street in Rome. Yeah, like
Roman way.
Here's what you look like. Your papal gown, which is this color, and your shoe size is this.
Yes. And this is your schedule, your daily activities.
Yep.
So anyway, all that to say, I just kept and so that eventually that argument, the papacy was convincing, and I'm like, okay, this is a legitimate form of authority that you can convincingly present historically is there. And it's just like there's no hint of Protestant authority, sola scriptura, anywhere at all.
It wasn't even on the table.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
Some people make the case that maybe Augustine was a proto-Protestant.
Very not true.
Not at all. And so Eucharist, the papacy, and then I really think Mary might have been a tough one.
This is funny.
And we talked a lot about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when we were first, so I remember there were some initial conversations, and even before Gina and I were dating, I was probably closer to Catholicism. That took me back a couple pegs, and then eventually made our way there together, which was nice and really beautiful. But I remember actually visiting here and having breakfast with you and kind of being like, I'm like really looking into Catholicism. And I think that was one of your questions then. But then when I was really looking into it, I remember having a phone call with you and you're like, I just don't get the Mary thing. Like, she's not special.
I remember saying that. Yeah.
Like, God could have picked any woman. He could have picked anybody.
Yep.
And I was like, I held my tongue so hard because I was like, I know why you think that, but so badly, I just wanted to be like, "This is my mom," you know. But yeah,
my mother.
yeah. So you struggled with Mary. I did too. I think there are two types of converts. There are those who are like, Mary's fine. This is my deal.
Right.
And then there are some that are
super
like,
what?
the Pope, no big deal, but Mary, why are you worshiping her? You know.
It seems to be praying to saints, Mary, Pope.
Or the Pope, yeah.
For
me, it was Pope and Mary. The saints thing, I had no problem. I was like,
Same.
I'm down.
That was done away with even before I considered
I was
Catholicism.
so down, yeah.
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 So,
and that one was a hard one because it's alien to Protestants. Just the idea, not even like the theology, but like just the idea of having a queen of heaven was weird to me at the time. And it was like, why? Like, I don't know. And so, but I bought a book, Brant Petree's Jewish Roots of Mary.
Oh, so
beautiful
good.
book. And it showed me that, man, like, okay, she is worthy to be venerated. She's worthy to at least ask for her help. You know, interceding, having her intercede for us. Like, wow, like, the role she plays. Her queenship was one of the easiest dogmas for me to actually take in.
That's weird too, because that's like the name of it would be, you would think would be the most controversial.
Yeah, Queen of Heaven. Yeah,
no problem.
I think he made the argument like, if there's a king of heaven, why is there not a queen? I'm like, I mean,
that makes sense.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
and it's the Queen Mother in the Old Testament. All this beautiful
stuff. The Queen Mother, I remember.
That was the name. I was like,
the queenship of Mary really hung me up because I'm like, God could assume Mary into heaven. He did it with Enoch and Elijah. No big deal.
Right.
Mary could be immaculately conceived because she's a temple vestable. Oh, that was the hardest one for you. For me, that was like no problem. But then the queenship, I was like, there's no way a human being is the queen of heaven. And then when I remember listening to Scott Hahn's sermon, he's like, and in the Old Testament, the queen was not the king's wife. It was his mother. Oh, and then the little passage came up and I like paused the video and I flipped to it and I'm like, oh, no, it's true. Yes. Yeah. And I remember like reading about, I think it's Bathsheba and Solomon's court is his queen mother. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? That was when I realized, sense. I was like, I have to trust. That was for me the moment when I was like, the magisterium has got to be right about everything. Because every time I'm like, that's insane. There's no way you have a good answer for it. When you drill down, you're like, they have a really good answer.
They have good answers for everything.
Everything.
They still do. I don't know how, like, anything doctrinally that needs to be believed, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and if at first you're like, no, then you find like some obscure father that says something and you're just like, oh man, there it is.
It's like they did their homework.
Yeah.
It's like they're apostolic.
Yeah, right. So Immaculate Conception was the hardest for you.
Yeah.
To accept about Mary.
Yes, and even now, like if someone came up to me like, why would you think she's immaculate conceived? Like, you know, they'll quote, you know, Romans or whatever. Oh, God bless your soul. They'll quote Romans and be like, yeah, like what is it? Like, all have fallen short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
Or
all
have fallen. I was conceived in sin.
Right.
You know, in my mother's womb, and it yes, I guess I just still didn't have a great answer for it, other than maybe like, you know, she needed to be greater than Eve. She needed to succeed where Eve failed. So if Eve introduced sin, she needed to be the one to introduce, you know, Christ. In order to do that, I guess she would need to be, you know, protected from sin herself by her nature.
Right.
It's still, I still am not good at explaining it. I believe it wholeheartedly. It's still hard for me to explain. So,
it is a tough one to explain, like the particulars of how it happens. For me, always viewing it through the lens of Mary as a temple vessel has been what's really helpful, right?
Like Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah, right, right. Like, because everything in the temple was purely consecrated for extraordinary use. And this is really primarily an argument for her perpetual virginity, but anything in the temple was for extraordinary temple use and couldn't be for ordinary use. So when it comes to Mary's virginity, obviously, extraordinary use, temple. But further than that, things in the temple were utterly devoted to it. They were consecrated. They were holy. They were set apart from the beginning of their smelting, all the temple vessels, including the ark. And so that's kind of the idea, is that like from her smelting, so to say, like when Mary was conceived, she would have had to have been set apart and dedicated to the temple.
Wow.
Which is, for me, that kind of helps because like the imagery of seeing how much God cared about holiness of like not human beings, like earthen vessels and like tables and stuff in the temple.
Right.
It's like, well, if he cared that much about a table and a lampstand made of gold, the woman
That's a good point.
the woman
You're
carrying him, he would have cared a whole lot more about the sanctity of her
Certainly.
constitution. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it is a tough one because like, especially with Protestant
growing up
sensibilities,
Protestant,
you're just
everyone's
like,
a sinner.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, you come up, you just,
Right.
there's always a Calvinist tinge to everything,
Right.
so you are deeply depraved.
But to the Calvinist, I say, if God predestines us for heaven or hell, what's wrong with him predestining Mary to be saved before conception for the sake of her son?
Right.
You know,
Right.
being born purely.
Right.
In purview of the merits of Christ, right?
Right.
So,
It's never
yeah.
apart from Christ.
Right.
So.
That's what's good. That's the beautiful thing about Mary is like you earlier said, like she's so worthy of all these things. It's not of her own merit in a Pelagian sense.
Right.
It's purely the adornment that Christ has given her, and she bears it so beautifully and humbly, as all of us are intended to.
Right.
In our perfection.
Yeah, she's not
at the end of
above
time.
us. I mean, in a way, yes, she is the.
Yeah,
She's
she is like
the jewel
the
of
most
creation.
grace-filled creation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yes, that she's worthy of
Quite
veneration.
literally, the most grace-filled creation, because she
Yes.
literally had
Yes.
grace in her womb. Yeah.
It's so cool. But at the same time, she's human, just like you
Right.
and me. And so,
Right.
like, she is. I don't know. I think taking all the. You said you had a kind of a heady kind of journey, right? And I needed to for this. Like,
Right.
I actually have always been more of a spiritual. That's not that you aren't, but like, like.
Just bookish over here.
Just this bookworm over here. He's not even floating yet. I mean, just kidding.
I'm clearly not reading Teresa of Avila, which I'm not.
But I've just always been attracted to that, right? Like, how can we just...
Yeah, you've always been a more pastoral person. Like, we've
Yes.
always said that about you.
The healing part,
Yeah.
the evangelistic, like,
How
I
does
wanna
that
share
apply,
this with
bro?
people.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. How does transubstantiation apply here today?
Right.
And it does. And so, but I think with Mary, the head journey needed to happen because it needed to make sense. But it was just so cool to develop a beautiful, I don't know, kind of relationship with her that's like unique as my mother. Like I embrace that. And having embraced that, oh my gosh, the fruit. It's just been so healing in a lot of my life. And I don't know, she's a mother. I love her.
Yeah, Mary, I think, is Mary's kind of the silver bullet in the way, like, if someone starts to connect with Mary, it's over. It's over.
I believe that now.
It's over.
If they touch a rosary, it's like, oof. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because really, like, I think, and this, when you first hear it as a Protestant, almost sounds blasphemous. But I forget who I heard this from first, that the person Mary hates the most, the person that Satan hates the most, he hates God with everything he is, but the creation he hates the most is Mary.
Yes.
Because Satan knows he can't win against God, like as prideful
He's
as
not
he is.
dumb.
He knows he's
Yeah.
lost. He's just like
Right.
biding
It's
his
God.
time. But like, I think a lot of exorcists and saints have talked about that it really bothers him that he can't beat Mary.
Yes.
That like this,
He could.
because he's the highest form of angel. He would have been a
Right.
seraphim that fell, most theologians think. And Mary is a human being. She's like part dirt, you know what I mean? It's like to
Right.
Satan, he's
Seriously.
like, what is this? And she's the queen of heaven, and he's cast into hell. So like the person that he hates the most is Mary.
Yeah.
Like God and Satan are not equal and opposites.
Certainly
They're
not.
opposed, but they're not equal.
Yeah.
Like God is just like, you know what I mean? Like it's no competition. But like Mary is a created being
Right.
that is opposed to him. So like that's his, in terms of like getting in the boxing ring,
Proper
that's like his,
interlocutor,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like his, yeah. And that was a good way to put it, because it's like, wait a minute, that makes sense. Like we're not Manichaeans. Satan and God aren't like arm wrestling with equal strength,
Right.
and who we don't know who's going to win. Like the victory's clear and it's already won. He's just trying to take out everyone he can. And so isn't it just like God that for the sake of the beauty of how he created things, to bestow a lot of the healing and graces through each other. That's what community is about. That's what the church is about. And then how much more so his mother, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And then to give her the grace to become our mother.
Yes.
Not because she's, Pelagius' best friend and earned it, but like he's like, I'm going to fill you with grace because through this, so many people will connect to me in a greater way. Yeah, it's really... that's what I love about the Catholic faith. At first, it seems like I remember I had a pastor who said, "Oh man, those Catholics, they just put so many mediators. Like the saints are mediators, Mary's a mediator. They're getting between you and God." Ooh. And now I'm realizing it's like the opposite. It's like God is giving us ways to understand Him that we can understand, like that we can really tangibly get to, like the Eucharist and Mary and the saints and each other. All of them materialize that which seems inaccessible. And God makes accessible through means that we understand the extraordinary things that we can't,
Right.
So it's not that they're between us and God, but they're really like the saints and Mary and all the sacraments in a different way are making tangible and physical that which is like purely spiritual.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because it's important to see that. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, a lot of Protestants see it like a mediator. They're in between.
Like they're getting in the way. It's competition.
Getting in the way. Like, why do I got to go through him to get to God? And
right.
I see their sentiment. It's like, if that were true, I'd be bothered by that too.
Sure.
Like, the curtain is torn. That's symbolic of.
I
don't need. Us. Yeah, right. Like, I have free reign, and yes, with limits, but isn't it just sweet that we are a body that cares for each other and will pray for you? Like, they're not a messenger because God is so lofty and wants to be away from you that He needs only perfect people to then talk to you. It's like He became human. He was in the muck, in the mire. So I don't know. My spiritual life has grown exponentially.
In what ways?
You know how, like, if people ask, I don't know, it sounds weird. I'm not bragging. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you know how pastors will sometimes, go up on a stage and be like, raise your hand if you're satisfied with your prayer life, right? And nobody raises it. He's like, all right, raise your hand if you just had the perfect, schedules, tools, whatever to, learn how to pray, every day. And everybody raised their hand, right? I've actually, noticed that if I were asked that question, like, do you think you pray enough? You think you have enough? Like, obviously I could be praying more. But I know that, I'm acutely aware of the need I have for God. And that often is shown itself in a prayerful moment. Right? And so I wouldn't say, I pray perfectly, I'm good, don't teach me anything else. It's more like...
I pray so good in front of as many people as possible.
Right,
all
out
the time.
loud, repetitiously.
So they can hear me,
But I am... It's a weird part of Christianity where it's completely satisfying, yet you want more. So I feel I am satisfied when I pray. And I can say I'm satisfied with how I pray, but I want more. And that my prayer life has been like that.
So your prayer life as a Catholic, obviously the opportunity for it to be very different is possible. Are you doing things like the rosary, or what's your prayer life as a Catholic look like versus when you were a Protestant?
I think it's a lot more...
it's probably better than mine, honestly. I suck at praying so bad.
Hey, man.
That's just so bookish over here. It is kind of true, though. It's funny you say that.
Down, Drew.
You say that, and I'm like, dude, that is my biggest struggle. Is like, I'm so stuck in the ideas of it sometimes. But anyways, your prayer life as a Catholic.
Well, so I love the rosary.
Okay.
It's beautiful. It's challenging. It's humbling. And it really causes... I don't think I have ADHD, but I definitely get distracted. And it's easy to get distracted.
Oh yeah, it's just long enough where you're like,
yeah.
By the when I'm on the second decade, I'm like, oh, bro, and then when I get to the third one, I'm like, rounding the corner, man, we're gonna get there.
But it's so I love it. I've had some of the most powerful moments with God I've had praying the rosary, and That's just another reason I love Mary. Like, she is
Yeah.
not there to shine a spotlight on herself.
She's the moon, bro.
She's the moon. He's the
Reflecting
sun.
the
He's
sun,
the
yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I love the Rosary. One of my favorites, and this has been, I'm going to promote this, is Word on Fire Ministries. It's Bishop Barron's, his apostolate. And they put out a liturgy of the hours.
Oh, okay. I've seen this,
Those
and I
orange
was curious.
booklets.
It's good. You subscribe to it?
I have from the month of June until right now. I have all of them.
Really?
And it's a subscription. So
Yeah.
you pay $7 a month, which is
Okay.
nothing, and you get this booklet that has the liturgy of the hour prayers every day, morning, evening, night, just the three. And so you pick the times of the day that you want to do those, but they are beautiful. It's almost entirely all scripture. That's really kind of what it is. And I love it. It is beautiful. I love it. It gets me in a rhythm. One of my favorite phrases I learned through my graduate program is, the ruts of ritual become the grooves of grace.
Oh.
And I think it's
that's so
true.
good. Oh, that's so good.
But that's it.
Wow. So you're doing the
it's
liturgy
true.
of the hours daily then, huh?
I try to. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
definitely do. I'm not.
You're not doing all
good.
three necessarily, yeah.
Evening's the hardest one, just because But I think it should be hard. Like, you should
Right.
revolve your day around around
Right.
God, rather than
Right.
the other way around. But morning is easy to wake up and start doing it. Nighttime's easy to. It's just right before you go to bed, and that one's shorter. And they're awesome. So that's prayerful. That's a great way. And then adoration. I love adoration.
Adoration's good.
That
Adoration
changed everything.
Yeah. Do you remember when I was still here? I was still going to Antioch. I was in that discipleship program, and I was going to that adoration chapel.
Yes, you mentioned that. I remember that.
Because I was like
And I'm
struggling.
like, what is
and there were
this?
so many challenges personally in that group for me because of some of the people there that were. I mean, it was just a rough thing, and you can listen to my story if you want to know the full details on like why that is. But yeah, I remember because when I went to Catholic school as a kid, we went to adoration, and I always remember really loving it. And like I didn't know at the time like what the Eucharist was or
Certainly,
wasn't.
yeah.
But I just remember it like smelling good and being peaceful and a place to like talk to Jesus. Like I didn't know how literal that was. And then at the time that I went during the Antioch D school is like after my theology degree, I'm in this like internship D school kind of thing at Antioch. And then I was like so frustrated with it all. I'm like, I can't get Jesus at this church right now because I'm like so mad about some of these things. Like I'm just gonna go somewhere that I know is gonna smell nice, and like I don't know that that's Jesus, but like I'll just pretend it is because that idea is cool. Like if that would be comforting.
Wow.
Yeah, psych, it was.
Well, looking back at that, how was that?
It's funny. I actually haven't had adoration that powerful since.
Whoa.
If that makes sense. Like
Yeah, it does.
because so I like we're talking. Like so many things changed in my life. Like, so when I graduated, I had an opportunity to do an internship with the freaking Church of England in England.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Do you know I said no to it?
Why?
Well, partly because I got a job at GCU and partly because I was dating a girl here. I said no to the England thing to say yes to D school because that was also another opportunity on
Right.
the table. I'm like, they're the same. Being a monk in London for a year, D school for a year, they're the same.
Yeah.
And now I have this girl that I might be dating. We'll see how it goes, but like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
D school, good friends, a good job, like that seemed better.
Right.
And then like I said no to the thing in England, which would have been like I don't even know what my life would have been like if I said yes. Part of the reason I said no too is I knew if I moved to England for a year, when that time was up, my parents were living in Colorado. And I wouldn't be in Phoenix anymore. Like I'd probably move home, and I didn't know if I wanted to do that, which is funny because I ended up doing that anyways. So like looking back, it's stupid.
You're like, "Dang
so I was like, oh, there's all like friends, maybe a girl, job, church I like, versus like England, which is really sick, and then not knowing it all after that. Whereas like Antioch was gonna be like my launch into pastoral ministry.
Right.
Within a month, it's like
they
broke
sell
up with the
that.
girl, left the job, and then within 2 or 3 months, D school was crap. So I'm like. All of this fell on my face, and I was going to adoration, and I was like, I don't think that is you, but if it is, that's cool, and like it was really powerful. Like I really felt connected to Jesus
That's
there.
so cool.
And then the more I went, and the more it kept being that, I was like,
Wow.
Something's happening here.
That's so
like God
cool.
is really
You
meeting
got
me here.
evangelized directly by God.
By the Eucharist, yeah.
That's incredible.
Because I was,
in a way.
I
Yeah.
mean, to be real, at that point, I was already at least Anglican in my heart.
Yeah.
And I had an agenda of like, people should know the power of like what Richard Foster talks about, the power of the disciplines.
Yes.
And then I was starting to go, maybe it's even a little further than that. And then I had the whole thing where I like defended Catholicism while not being a Catholic. And then like as that happened,
at D-school?
that was.
Yeah.
I gave a presentation on St. Francis, and like I made like he was on the list, and I was like, he's not Francis, he's St. Francis. He's very Catholic. Here he is. And everyone was like, why do Catholics worship saints and all this stuff? Like all their questions were about Catholicism. I'm like, why are you asking me? I'm not Catholic. But then I defended them. I was like, well, here's why. And people were like, what? And then I got chastised a lot. But
I don't mean to bring this
Yeah.
up, but that's what you got chastised for?
yeah. Wow. Yeah. So you know how it's like whenever we confront people in the church, we should have two people with us? Like that's like
Yeah.
they talk about that.
Yeah.
This was not that way. I was alone with the person yelling at me, very frustrated, just the two of us. And yeah, it was bad. That's why I left. But then at that point, I was like, well, here I am, not at Antioch, now going to Eucharistic adoration, and all of a sudden Father Mike Schmitz is popping up on my YouTube a lot. I'll start watching him.
Father Mike?
Yeah, and what's funny is like the week after my presentation on St. Francis, I'm not kidding, the first question, this girl raises her hand and goes, why do Catholics worship saints? And I said, okay, first off, they don't worship saints, but if you're asking why they pray to them, it's like, why do I pray? Why do I ask you to pray for me? Well, because intercession. I'm like, it's the same thing, and they're with God. Wouldn't that be better? You know.
Right.
A week later, Father Mike Schmitz, Ascension Presents, on my Facebook feed, because Facebook listens and probably put it there to keep me on Facebook. But he shows up and it's like, why do Catholics pray to saints? And he has this whole video on it, and I was like, what the heck? So that really was a turning point in a way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't intended to be, because like when I gave that presentation, I was like, I think Catholics are Christians.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be Catholic. And then when I got like chastised and kind of shoved out over it, I was like, well, I'd rather be across the street at the Catholic school than here.
Well, they do.
Because there's a Catholic school right there, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said that to somebody.
You should connect.
Yeah, and then sure enough, here I am. It was, and I remember joking. Maybe I don't remember if it was to you guys or it was to other friends. I was like, it would be so funny if I became Catholic after all this. And as soon as I said it, I was like, I won't. But there was a deeper part of me that was like, Drew, yeah, you will. So it started all the way back then. But yeah, the Eucharist was a big part of it. And at that point, it wasn't like I knew it was like, oh, the Eucharist is what's going to convert me. I was like, this would be cool if it's true. And like maybe a part of me wanted it to be, but I like in no way
maybe
believed
you didn't.
it.
Yeah, and maybe it was like I don't know it's not true,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it is.
I pretty confidently was like, I don't think it's true,
Yeah.
but like it's beautiful as an idea.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where I didn't have a problem with like Catholics believing it was true, because I was like, God can meet them in that idea. I was more at a point where the beauty of liturgy was starting to become a necessity for me, because I was realizing that like the way that a lot of evangelical churches run, so it's lex orandi, lex credendi. The rule of belief is the rule of prayer is the rule of belief, right? Like the way, not just the things that we say we believe about God, but the way that we offer worship to Him and orient our lives around that worship, not just says what we really believe, but also reinforces that belief and forms it properly, especially in younger people, like as kids, like, but in all people, it forms it. And so like, the book by Mark Sayers, a Protestant pastor, called The Disappearing Church, really sets this home. It's so good. His whole thesis is like, before the missionary movements, we never contextualized the gospel to cultures, which was a problem. And that's not necessarily true, but we did contextualize, but we didn't do a lot of it. So like we'd go to Africa, they never had the gospel, and we would just be like, here's the gospel plus European culture copy paste, you know. And I mean, a lot of European culture is Catholicism, so like now I'm kind of like, well, you have to kind of parse that apart. But at the time, like that is true of a lot of Protestant mission movements. They went, well, we used to just say, you want Christianity, now like also be like a German, you know, because like the Anabaptists are the ones that evangelized you, or the Lutherans are the ones that evangelized you, or the Anglicans. So now you're going to be very Anglo-Saxon in your culture. But then the problem is we try to take that missionary approach of contextualizing everything back to evangelizing secular, postmodern Europe and America, when you take the gospel to a culture that's never had the gospel and you put it in terms that make sense to them, they gain the gospel and it redeems their culture. When you take the gospel to a culture that's built off of leaving Christianity, you don't gain them, you lose the gospel.
Interesting.
And so that's his whole thesis, is like, by trying to make Christianity appeal to the American culture and the Western European culture, those are decidedly built off of deconstructing Christianity. So when you try to be relevant, you're not contextualizing Christianity in a way that makes sense to someone that's never heard it. Right. You're just proving their point. We don't need this. All we need is the emotional music.
Wow,
and you've given it to us, but you haven't given it to us as good as Cardi B. So we'll go to her concert. Seriously. Thank you very much. Well, maybe not Cardi B, but like U2. You know what I mean? Coldplay, the ultimate Christian band that's not Christian. People go to a Coldplay concert to worship, to feel emotion. And no amount of Hillsong, which sounds oddly like Coldplay, is going to do that better than Coldplay. So why do we need the Jesus stuff snuck in the middle, Right. So I was already at that point where I was like, this liturgy, this way of worshiping is communicating something, and it's not the gospel of the New Testament. So then I was like, we need to be like super Anglican, and not the kind that's like, I'm going to hold my tongue a little bit. Yeah, pretty much like 7 sacraments kind of Anglican, and I was that for a while. But yeah, I mean, for me, Richard Foster in a lot of ways opened that door for me too. That's cool. Yeah.
He's not Anglican, right?
I don't think so. Dallas Willard was...
he was Methodist.
Was he Methodist? I thought he was Anabaptist. He was a Quaker in his roots.
Oh, wow.
So maybe he ended up a Methodist, but... Because they were pretty big on that too. It's like the Anglicans' sisters in some ways.
Yeah,
you know, comes from the John Wesley.
They're the 3rd biggest church in the U.S. I didn't know that.
Are they really?
Yeah. In the Protestant. In the Protestant.
Yeah, in the mainline. Yeah. Anyways, that was a big thing for me. It's interesting, like... I'm curious to hear your take on this. So converting to Catholicism, and you've said this about prayer, but I want to see if there's any other areas in your life. And maybe there's not, and that's okay. For me, I feel like when I converted, there was a ton of graces in other areas, like particularly like evangelism and like being, like not even like, oh, I'm better at talking about my faith, but I just couldn't help it. But so like in your life, like pre-confirmation Aaron, post-confirmation Aaron, because you were already following Jesus with your whole heart. So there were already graces channeling into your life that I think are evident.
He was baptized as a baby.
Yeah. So was there anything that like, all right, I got confirmed, they gave me the Eucharist, whoa, that's different. Like, for me, it wasn't like the next day, but like I could tell within the immediate year after, I was like, this is present and it wasn't before.
Yeah. Great question. Thanks for that softball one. That was.
Oh, is that a softball?
Well, I guess I just have like, like it excites me because like, yes, absolutely. Like, so growing up Protestant, I would just say like evangelical. Sure. It's in the name, evangelism. Like you go and you share, right? But that was uncomfortable, awkward, and just scary. Like, and it still kind of is. It's just like a weird thing to go and like share something that could be potentially offensive to someone just randomly, or just make it really awkward routine friends. I don't know. It's still kind of odd, but I just never had the passion to do it before. Like an authentic passion that came from within. It felt obligatory, really. But afterwards, it just became so much easier to share things because, and I just had good answers. Like an example, a friend at work, first day I met him, he's a very like curious person. He just thinks about life and things and how does stuff work, and he's just curious. And like we just talked about our love for philosophy, shared love. And he's like, yeah, he would explain when he was at his previous job, he just always got into it with a coworker, and one of the things they talked about was you can't prove that you have a soul. And I was like, actually you can. Like the Catholic tradition has an answer to that question, which is wild. Like to me, there are answers to these hard questions. And as a Protestant, I just never like, it's not that it wasn't there, but it was tucked just so far away from, the daily active life of being an evangelical, non-denominational Christian. Like, you had to go and get a degree to go find that.
Right.
Right. Whereas on, like, Catholic world, it's just on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's in books. It's on on relevant radio. It's just there. It's just up in the conscience of the Catholic mind, usually. And I just began sharing, like, just everything I could. Like, anything that just seemed relevant. I was like, oh, I'd share it. And it just became so much easier. And it just is easier to talk about the gospel.
Yeah.
Because it's richer, it's robust, it is a sharp and strong like antidote to this postmodern world we live in. And I really believe that.
I feel like since both of us converted, I feel like I've noticed, and this has nothing to do with the fact that you and I converted, it's just the world we live in, and it's probably, maybe in a way that we don't realize, responsible for pushing us in the opposite way. I feel like the world has gone even deeper that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's gotten even harder. Because, like, I feel like 100 years ago, someone would have been like, oh, you don't need that level of rationalism to have meaning in the world,
Right.
Whereas now they're like, yeah, it's either that or, like, the world is meaningless,
Yeah.
Like, and that really, it is that
Right.
distinct,
Rationalistic,
like
relativistic.
Like even someone like James Lindsay, like a staunch atheist on Twitter, like a couple weeks ago, was like, wow, I'm finding that a bunch of these people I disagree with about political ideologies are also into the occult. That seems really interesting. That, like, because I don't know if anyone knows who James Lindsay is. He did the whole grievance studies hoax where they realized, like, academia was getting so almost parodied in terms of some of the things that sociology was pushing about, like gender studies and this and that they're like, well, we could probably make stuff up and sneak it into these conferences. And they did. They made up multiple papers, snuck them into these conferences with fake names that were, like, obviously parody, and they won awards.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. And he was, like, staunch atheist mathematics guy, and, like, a couple weeks ago, he's like, why is it that everyone that's in these spheres is also usually into the occult? Like, I'm an atheist, and this doesn't make sense. And he's kind of going, there's something here, and it's not just human fallibility. It's, like, spiritual,
Right.
Anyways, not to side rail.
Yeah,
but it seems like it's moving back towards paganism. Like, the needle for so long was, like, nominally Christian. Now I say Christian when you ask me in the poll, but, like, I don't ever go to church except on Easter, to now, like, nothing. We're, like, nothing, and now it's very quickly becoming, like, an emerging paganism.
And I think there's a book, I don't know the author, you should go look it up, Strange Rites. Bishop Barron had the author on an interview.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. She is going through this resurgence of these weird, not weird, but, like, these just alternative ways of spirituality, like astrology, the occult, and just, like, tarot cards, and, like, people are using these now. They can acknowledge a spiritual realm. Yeah, it's not just, like, fun
at a high school party, like, to make fun of Christianity. It's like
crystals,
real.
like rocks.
Sedona, bro.
Sedona. Like, and weird. I keep saying weird. I don't mean to say weird, but just, like, very like,
esoteric and, like, not mainstream American
not
culture.
Mainstream at all.
Right.
It's very spiritual, not religious.
Right.
And I think the point is because you can shape that. I mean, this is very pessimistic, but they use it. It's a confirmation bias. You could just use that to make yourself feel good.
Well, it's self-creation at its
Self-creation,
fullest, right?
self-identification,
like, at some point, the whole
self-fulfillment.
Self-fulfillment. I had a professor I just saw today, shout out Jim Miller, who used to really, really, really say that, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs was demonic. And we're all like,
wow.
what? And his point was, like, maybe, like, Maslow didn't mean it this way, but the way we've interpreted him, because at the top of the pyramid, what is it? It's self-actualization.
Yeah, right.
And his whole point was, like, yourself is never defined by you. Yourself is defined, well, first and foremost by God, but also the next biggest thing that gives you your identity is your family and your community.
Other people,
Those are your touch points to reality. If you implode into the self, you become really weird really quick because you have no grounding outside of your own idiosyncrasies.
Reality ceases to be reality.
Like, our brains are really strange, especially the more time we spend alone. And so self-actualization just becomes some twisted form of pride that becomes self-creation.
Right, yeah.
And maybe Maslow didn't mean that. He probably didn't. But, like, that's what we've turned it into in our culture.
Oh, absolutely.
And postmodernism
self-love,
is choose what you want to be.
Choose your truth
with
is your
no
truth.
limitations. It's Gnosticism to escape the body, right?
Completely tolerant of everything.
Yeah.
Except for
someone
truth.
that says that you can't cross that line.
Right.
It's like, why are you making the line? It's like, I didn't make the line. You're just going to trip over it and see what happens. Right. And then they do, unfortunately. And that's like, you know.
It is sad.
Yeah.
So I have a splash of cold water hit my face after the day after. I just realized,
Bro, and your
my
bishop,
gosh.
Was it your bishop or was it a priest that confirmed you?
It was a priest. Father Steve.
He slapped him, dude. He did the old school thing. He smacked you.
Yes. He was going down the line. I was like, he's slapping them. Okay, I'll just go with
I got the nice little bit of oil and the pat on the back.
It was like
you just got
a good slap. I was like, all right, Father Steve. I like it.
You're like, bro, I'm throwing hands after him. You want to go?
Steve,
I
love you, but
I was like, oh, that's what there's. Oh, that is traditional. I wish now I'm mad that I didn't get slapped. Like, am I even a Catholic?
I'll slap you. Yeah, you aren't yet. Okay. I'll do it real quick.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I'm excited. Doesn't it excite you?
Yes.
To be in this world? It sounds like bad in a way, but it's like, and we have the right answer.
Yes.
Like you have the sword.
And it's
a
not
world
because
filled
of
paper.
you being so
it's
smart.
Like, I'm ready. Yes.
This is one of
nothing to do with me.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I try to tell people, like, and I have conversations, and they're like, well, why is it like you're right or you're right? I'm like, listen to me very clearly. I'm not saying that I, Drew Lowen, am so smart that I figured it out. I'm saying I researched it, and what I started to find was there was a lot of people saying this is what was given to us. So there's like a humility to the apostolic nature of Catholicism.
That's very true.
Because you're not saying, oh, look at us. We just happen to be the smartest denomination, so clearly we interpreted the Bible correctly. We're saying, no, we're a bunch of idiots that needed to have it handed to us, and all we were told is, don't change anything, and we didn't. You know what I mean? And that's really the difference. Instead of being like, we have the technology to interpret the Bible perfectly, so come to our church. It's like, no, we are a bunch of idiots and sinners, and we're fallible human beings, and we mess up. But what we tell you does not come from our own mouth. The fathers say that so much. Like, I'm not telling you my own words or my own inventiveness. I'm passing on to you what was handed to me.
Right. Mm-hmm. That tradition, that which is handed on is powerful.
Now it's just a dirty word, but
yeah. I don't know the name of it's got a name, this fallacy, but it's like you think because you're like you are in the present, you're automatically more intelligent, have more resources, have more knowledge than those in the past, and that's not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And so it's just I don't know, but
the fallacy of progressivism, really.
Yeah.
Like at its
That
progressivism.
it's therefore it's right, or therefore it's good.
Because it's new. Yeah. Novel is
dude,
right.
I've had the best conversations. I had a conversation with a coworker. That was just amazing. He grew up Catholic actually.
Oh, interesting.
But this in his words, he just did not get it. He was like, but then I found out about the Council of Nicaea and I realized, this isn't it. And he meant like, oh, they just invented the Bible. He was confusing it with a different council, but like it was. He said they just made the Bible, wrote, and then that's what it is. Instead of, and I was like, what did you expect it to be? And he said he didn't really know. And then I explained,
what a good question.
Yeah, like what did you expect it to be? Because in Islam, they actually believe it came down and was given. Yeah. And he's like, and I explained to him like, they got together, they had criteria of that was stringent and important, and it had to align with this or it just wasn't included. Mm-hmm. And because they had to recognize Scripture. They didn't write it. Mm-hmm. They recognized it, right? Mm-hmm. And they had the authority to do so.
Here's all the books we've been using. Let's just sift the sand a little bit,
Right. And he was blown away by that. And then it got like, so tell me more about this. And like, what do you think about, what do you think about people of other religions having really profound spiritual experiences? Like, how do you explain that?
Vatican II,
I know. I was so happy that God, allowed me to be Catholic at that moment. Because I would not have been able to answer that in my formation.
You'd have been like, they're probably the devil.
I don't know. It's probably just made up in their mind and they don't even know.
But not for us.
Right, not for us, no.
When it's us, it's not made up in our mind.
I literally was
when
like,
it's a Hindu, it is.
We as Catholics have the fullness of truth.
Sure.
And then as you go out from there, it's kind of like turning away slowly away from the light, right? Whereas atheists, I don't even know what you'd put at the very edge, but people are just looking out completely into darkness, and then slowly you come back into the center.
It's really funny that you use those words. I've been really wrestling with the polemic nature of our world. Like everything is right, left, right?
Right, yeah.
Wings,
Yes.
fighting.
Very binary in a bad way.
Yeah, male versus female.
Right.
Right versus left, trad versus, boomer right, whatever it is. And I'm like, there's something wrong about that dichotomy. And there's a lot of things to unpack about that. But I think the biggest one is like, I realize in terms of the faith, like it can never be, we have it right because of the idea and those people have the wrong idea. It's less that, and it's like, we have the fullness of truth, but that's not because of, that's purely because of grace. And so like,
Yes.
I recently had a night, I was out smoking my pipe, just journaling about this because it was really bothering me. It's like, I've noticed there's some people who are technically right, and I'm this person a lot, might be technically correct about something with the faith or with philosophy or whatever.
Yeah.
But that does not give me an excuse to be an asshole to someone who isn't. Like, why aren't you here? Like, why aren't you right? Like, are you an idiot or something?
Right.
And I'm like, the dichotomy is not like, well, I did the research and came to the proper conclusion and you just are not putting the time in. The proper conclusion is like, I have the grace to be by the fire that's keeping me warm and giving me life.
Oh, and you want to share that.
And I'm not fighting the person that's out there because they don't have a different fire that's competing with mine.
Right.
They're in the cold and they're shivering. So of course they're screaming and they're loud and they're mad. So it's not my role to be like, your fire versus my fire. Let's see whose wins.
Right.
It's like, I have this flame, not because I started it. I'm not the one that sparked it. It was grace, right?
Oh, come on,
And
bro.
the reason they're so loud and angry and bitter is because they're alone and frightened in the darkness.
I really like that image because I think it humanizes the other side. And I'm learning in my program that even the worst of people, what they're doing, like we are fundamentally, as humans, this is the Catholic Christian perspective, we are good. Fundamentally, in our natures are good. What happens is sin distorts the good. It's not this like we're filled with evil like juice. Like it's not like this oil and water, it can't mix. You need one more than the. It's just like no, like it's good but distorted, it bent, diseased, whatever you want to use. And
concupiscence,
exactly, we're drawn towards that. But everyone's searching for the good ultimately, but often it's in distorted ways.
Yeah, perverse, right? That's like the technical definition of perverse.
And perverse, right. It's just bent, it's like wrong, but like they're
Falling
still
short,
seeing the good. And so I think that aligns well with that analogy of like, they're just cold. They want the fire. They just, for whatever reason, like
they're
it's just
afraid of getting
hard.
burned, perhaps. Even like I
Yeah,
know I need to
exactly.
be warm, but I
Or it's
also
bright, I
know that
can't
I'm
see.
so cold that it
Right.
might burn me, or that I might not
Kinda-
see.
oh, it's like Gollum.
It is. Gollum is the perfect depiction of sin.
Yes.
Especially in the.
It's
Have you read the
sad.
books?
I haven't. I have not.
You think he's
Ever
good
since
in
I
the
became
movies?
Catholic, I've
You
been
think he's good in
needing
the
to.
movies? Gollum in the books almost brought me to tears at multiple points in the Two Towers and the Return of the King, because the one thing you get in the books of the Lord of the Rings that you don't get in the movies is because there's just no practical way to do it in the movies. You get the inner monologues of the characters.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
it'll like tell you what Gollum was really thinking and why he did this, or what Frodo was thinking.
Kind of did that with the back and forth, right?
Yeah, they try to do it with
Yeah.
the back and the forth, but there's something so powerful in the books where like Gollum will do something, and then Tolkien, the narrator, explains his interior monologue, and it's not shown at all.
Okay.
It's just entirely interior. And one of those moments is when he sees Sam and Frodo having a legitimate bond of friendship and brotherhood, and it reminds him, because this is also after when Frodo has this like deep sympathy or really empathy for Gollum of like, I could become that if I bear this for too long. And the thing that keeps Frodo from that is Sam. The brotherhood, it's right, something outside of himself that attaches his identity back to reality, not to his own idiosyncrasies and his own sinfulness and his own attachment to the ring. Gollum sees that Frodo's bearing the ring, and he sees that Frodo has Sam, and that's anchoring him in the connection they have. There's some moments when like in the book, I forget what it says, but it says something along the lines of like he almost like remembers his own like self and like that he's a person. Like he's almost forgotten that he's a person. He's so consumed with the ring.
Oh, wow.
And there's
that
like
is
there's
sad.
these moments like where you just read Gollum's interior monologue and you just want to cry. Because all at once you're like, wow, that would be so horrible. But then you're also like, wow, that's me.
Yeah.
With my sinfulness.
I can get that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can think of the times where I have been like, I am choosing sin. Mm-hmm. And I can, now that you like have given me a picture, I can see in those moments where it's like I am forgetting who I am. I'm living in a delusion where this will help, this sin will heal, this sin will, whatever good I'm looking for, this sin will provide. And it won't. And then when it doesn't and it, peters out, I'm like, I'm left in the cold. It feels like, I'm like, well, I'm cold again.
And then the resentment for the fire sets in. I've noticed this with myself. Like when I really, like if I'm really doing something sinful, usually the moment I become aware of it, like, because I feel like when we get in moments, especially when it's like something maybe like, not just like a little venial sin of like, oh, I snapped in traffic, but like when we've done something consciously that's bad, maybe not even a mortal sin, but maybe like a pretty strong venial sin, the awareness of it, I usually resent discovering. Yes. And it makes me want to draw away from God. And that's exactly what I'm like, bro, I'm going to confession.
Yes.
Because it's like, confession's the most beautiful thing, I think.
I love it. Because it's hurtful.
It
hurts, but it is... I forget who said this quote, but someone described themselves going to confession. They said, I go joyously bounding into the confessional line, knowing what is set before me afterwards. And I want that. And he's got it right. I forget who said it, but it was just beautiful. And
yeah, we got a new priest recently, and confession lines take a lot longer because he like really talks to people. And I find myself, and I told him this one time and he laughed. I was like, Father, I found myself sitting in line waiting for like 45 minutes being like, gosh, I wish this would go quicker. And then I realized the reason I wish it would go quicker is because I had 45 minutes to really sit here and go, oh my goodness, this is bad. Yeah. And then you go in there expecting like, I don't want to tell him this is embarrassing, because like I go where he can see me. So like he knows it's me telling him the thing. He would know anyways, but like
I don't have that. Is that
really?
a thing?
Yeah, there's like a piece of glass between us, but like I'm staring at him and he's hearing me and he's seeing me. So for us, it becomes like a conversation.
Whoa.
It's really cool.
That's a different element.
It's really cool. Yeah, because before I used to do the screen and be like, Father, forgive me for I have lied 2 times and ate too much Cheetos. Go in peace, Whereas this is like, I did this stupid thing again. I got all mad and I know I was going to do it. And then he's always this is what I love about our priest. So shout out Father Matthew. He embodies Christ so well in the confessional, because I'll go in there and be like, dang it, I got all mad again. Because for me, it's been anger a lot lately. And I'll go in there and be like, this is what happened, or whatever leads me to whatever brought me in there. And I'm like, I knew it was going to happen, or whatever it is. I'm sharing the story. And usually it's in just like shame and defeat, because I'm having to tell this priest like what I did.
Right.
And he's always like, well, how brave of you to run right to the confessional. This is the full power of Calvary unleashed on. And he always has relics in there too.
No way.
Oh, dude has a reliquary of his own. Like he's got a collection. But yeah, he had a relic of St. George in there last time. It's like a little bone chip of St. George, which is sick.
Yeah.
But he's always like, this is the full power of Calvary, and like God's only response to you in here is mercy, and he's glad that your response was to run to him. Yeah. And like that's so different.
Glory to Jesus Christ. That is so cool.
Because like as a Protestant, you're like, man, I sinned really egregiously, and I know God forgives me, past, present, and future, but like, I don't know, why do I keep doing it? Whereas in the confessional, like you're like, oh man, I have to go tell this priest, and that should scare me. Oh, this is the other thing I told him. I'm like, I'm always sitting out there going, man, I can't believe I have to tell Father Matthew I did this. And then like, I should be going, I can't believe I have to tell Jesus I did this. But then the deeper thought is, I know what his answer is going to be. You know what I mean?
I love the mind like exercise and struggle you have to go through.
Yeah, it's a wrestle for sure.
It really is.
And I think it's powerful. Yeah. Okay, so you converted. You're Catholic. You've had graces. You've mentioned this a couple times, but throughout our friendship, you've always had this pull towards helping people. There was periods where you wanted to like serve on missions. There's periods where you wanted to do all sorts of different things. You wanted to be EMT at one point.
I was bouncing all over the place.
You and me both.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing now? What's you're studying? Right. So you're getting a master's degree. Tell us about that.
So currently I am a graduate student at Divine Mercy University.
So sick.
In Virginia. Oh, right. Coolest name ever.
You're taking it online though?
So it's a hybrid. It's mostly online, mostly asynchronous. So I'm not like in a lecture class online. But I'll go to residencies, 5-day residencies there on campus where they'll teach more, walk us through workshops and skill learning. It's a degree in mental health counseling, clinical mental health counseling.
So you're going to be an LPC?
Yeah, that's the goal.
From a Catholic perspective.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I am at the right place because they take it so seriously. It is, like right now, one of my classes, it has not that it has very little to do with counseling, but it has very little to do with like counseling directly. Like it's all about the foundational, philosophical, theological, psychological foundations of why the Catholic Christian model is the most robust model to best, it's not even a model, it's a meta model of looking at other models to help people flourish. That's what you're doing. Like that perspective, like what other university
just balancing impulses. You're like saying, how can you become what you're meant to be as a human being?
Yes, they look, and it's so hard. I'm getting my butt whooped by how hard this is. My teacher, Dr. Craig Stephen Titus, look him up.
What a name, dude.
Oh, he's got the look. He's just
Stephen Titus.
Craig Stephen Titus is the man. I love him. He is a professor through and through. He is he's a philosopher through and through. That is just the wheelhouse. And so he's the one teaching the class, and he's incredible. Like he was the co-author of the main book that we use, the meta model of the human person, throughout the whole class, and it is showing me how much help people need. Not just like with the problem they come in with, but more than that. And how much help we can give them. We have so many tools that we can use. And so I'm going on and on. But I love this school. I love what I'm learning. And I'm exactly where I need to be. So, yeah.
That's so good.
It's awesome, man.
We have to have like a whole nother episode where we just talk about that.
I would love the intersection between mental health and faith. Like I wanted to find a program or find some kind of career where I can intersect theology with psychology, and I'm there. You're there, and that's what they do.
You and Emily got to come visit us in Montrose so that we can record that episode.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Okay, I've only thought like 3, but real quick lightning round.
Okay, go.
Favorite? This is almost a bad question. In the onset of Catholicism, not necessarily now, but as you were converting, what was like your favorite sacrament? Like maybe in the idea of it or in the reception of it or whatever. Like as you were learning about the sacraments, what were you like? Boom.
Definitely, it has to be
lightning round. So you got to answer
Eucharist.
Fast. Okay,
Eucharist, for sure.
Sunday school answer, but it's the source
the second
summit.
Marriage.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a good answer. It's a good answer. Okay. Favorite saint.
Ooh.
Off the first one that came to your mind. Who was it?
Saint Therese, Little Flower. I love her.
Wasn't that was your confirmation?
That was my confirmation saint.
Homie got confirmed as Therese.
Dude, like the priest is going down slapping faces, and he's saying the names boldly, like whatever. He gets to me and he like looks at the name tag because we all have name tags, and he like kind of like says it under his breath, Saint Therese, you are now whatever, and I'm like, oh gosh, this probably never happens, but I love her. She's great.
Man. Okay.
I want to be like her.
Favorite pope.
John Paul II.
Okay. Nice. I was like, as soon as that came out, I was like, that could be a dangerous one. Favorite Marian dogma?
Ooh. Favorite Marian dogma? Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven. Okay.
That's
favorite church father?
I love, that's a tough one. I don't know a whole lot.
Okay.
I'm going to say Ignatius. His thoughts on the Eucharist.
Yeah, Ignatius is really good. Okay, last one. not Catholic, but Protestant figure or celebrity or YouTube person that you think is going to convert next?
Convert next?
Yeah. Maybe it's that you think is probable, or that you think or wish list. Who knows?
Wish list? Oh, I
Okay,
would.
let's do each. Most probable and wish list. Like top. Like who's your top that you would want to, and who do you think actually will next?
Wish list.
This is presumptuous. Too.
Yeah,
This is a really rude question, but it's so fun.
I love answering it. I seriously love
All
Dr.
respect.
Gavin Ortlund.
Yeah.
That man, he challenges me.
Really fair.
Fair, amazing man. I want him to be in the church.
It'd be
Like
cool.
if he were on our side, game over. Honestly.
Unlimited power.
Literally. Wish list. Can I go someone like, or sorry, that was wish list. Who,
That was wish
probable. I mean, the
Probable.
guy who I thought did, Cameron Bertuzzi.
Yeah, that was.
Bertuzzi. I don't know how you say his last name.
Shout out to Kim.
He
That was
did.
awesome. Way
I
to follow
also
your
want
conviction.
the guy, Cosmic Skeptic.
That would be
Alex
huge,
O'Connor.
man. Because like,
He's such a good
if
thinker.
Alex O'Connor just like looped right over and just became like mere Christianity, like straight to Catholicism, that would be crazy.
Yeah, game over for the rest
And
of
then
the world.
you know what? That's really personal for you too, because Aaron for a long time was a vegan,
Yes.
and now you're not.
Alex, now I'm not.
He became Catholic and was shown the light that God gave us all of the
No, I
animals
was
for
just-
food.
I was shown street tacos. That's what
Yeah,
I was shown. So, let's be
evangelized
real.
by street tacos. Although when you were vegan, I had the ability to pretty much get you to eat meat whenever.
Yes, I know. Drew, you love that one. You love.
I
Well, that's
got-
because you'd get the things I love, like
Oh, yeah.
In-N-Out Burger.
I think it was especially
sucker.
true once I moved away though. Like when I still lived
It
here.
was like the one time I could
Yeah.
like excuse it.
Yeah, I would
Like,
come
"Oh,
back and
Drew's here."
visit, and I'd be like, dude, I'm gonna get In-N-Out. You want to come? He'd be like, bro, I'm vegan. I'd be like, Aaron, you'll flex. Like, let's go get In-N-Out, and we would.
I was a flexitarian. for a long
Flexitarian.
time.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
Alex is very convincing on his veganism, though. I don't know if you know this. He is a vegan himself, and his is entirely philosophical, and he's very convincing. And so I'm like, ooh. Like factory farming, all that stuff. Anyway.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I'm all about like, and this. I think this would repulse some people. If I was in a place to do so, I would entirely raise my own meat
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
I would feed the cow that will feed me,
Right.
and he would have a great life. She would have a great
Certainly.
life.
Yeah.
The chickens, same way.
They'll have great
I
lives.
would even name them and like give them dignity.
Right. I
And
think
they
that's
say
dignifying.
they say don't name your animals, but I'm like, this also sounds repulsing. It wouldn't stop me from eating it just because I named it. And you could name it like chicken fried steak or whatever. You know what I mean? You could like
Chicken
cutlet.
fried steak.
Hey,
Yeah.
cutlet, get over here.
CFS.
Yeah, yeah.
Cutlet.
Hey, burger, get over here. But no, like, but in all seriousness, yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think we've lost a lot by not knowing where our food comes from in a really grotesque way of like knowing that like someone
Yeah.
had to work their butt off to take care of this cow, and then they had to kill it and butcher it, and that feeds you. Like, there's a gratefulness that's associated with that.
Absolutely.
And then the respect and like
It's
dignity.
way more dignifying to that creation.
We try to
Absolutely.
get a lot of our meat from a local farmer that does that. He does all regenerative ag too. So like what that means is he's electrofencing cows, and so that they're moving along lands that need like restoration, because like cows
That's cool.
will eat grasses and then they'll poop, and then the other cows will stomp the poop into the ground, and that softens the dirt and puts really high nutrient value poop in the dirt and makes the soil better for like other crops.
Cool.
And so he's doing that, and
That's
then
awesome.
All of his
Wow.
cows are really well cared for.
Yeah, I just go down to Safeway and fries.
Yeah.
Kroger.
So his first cow that he bought, they actually gave her like a permanent place in the herd. So she's like retired, meaning she won't be butchered. And like that's a cool thing to do. It's like
That's
you
cool.
bought a cow,
Aw.
and like you know you're not gonna kill her. Like she's
Yeah.
just like mama cow. She's just like, these are my peeps. I don't know why they keep disappearing,
my
but
herd. Wow, where did,
they keep
where
going.
did Tim go?
He has a cow named Dennis, because he named after Dennis the Menace, because he's kind of cantankerous. And he is, man, he's a total little shit. Like, we were filming them, and he was just like looking at us like, I'm going to stomp you, bro. Like, he just gave me a
He's
look.
like doing the
yeah,
thing.
yeah, and he would just like come up, and he just has this devious look. It's so funny. But
Cow
like,
with the
knowing
devious
like,
look, I
we're
love it.
hanging out with this cows, filming them, and I'm like, I'm probably going to eat one of you next year, like when I buy beef from him. But it's cool to like have seen
I think
them
it's, yeah,
healthy and
especially if
happy.
it's done in a humane way,
Right.
with no pain. And it's
Yes,
just like,
and it can be done that way, and it should be. Oh, totally, totally. See,
I'm a fan of that.
Chickens are where it's done really awful. Like it's really.
I've
like,
heard the wildest stories
yeah.
of how people do it.
Yeah.
Like they'll grab it and swing it around.
Yeah,
them,
you
I
can
don't
be
know.
humane. Ironically, being humane seems not humane, but like I have a friend and he has his in-laws have a small farm and they raise their own meat birds, and how they do it is they actually put the chicken upside down in a traffic cone and then they can just like decapitate them and they're dead pretty much immediately.
Oh yeah.
It seems funny because you're like putting a chicken in a traffic cone and lopping its head
Oh, like the head pops through the traffic cone and comes off.
as kind
That's
of
fast.
as kind of a guide. But yeah, they just go
Yeah.
and it's done.
Yeah.
All the other stuff. But really, the raising of them is where it usually goes wrong. Like they're stuffed in like cages and stuff like that.
Oh,
whereas
that's
theirs are like not like they're not even free range because free range is like 3 meters of space. That's all it needs to be.
Oh wow.
Maybe it's more than that, but it's like not much. It's
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, pasture raised
Oh,
is
that's
what's really good.
Oh, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because free range eggs go for way more than not free.
Yeah.
Organic free range eggs. Go
Yeah,
for
maybe
something.
it's more than 3 meters, but it's like not a ton of space.
Right,
You're like,
yeah.
that's not great. Pasture raised, I believe, is where it's like that chicken is like, whoa, look at all this land, man. Like they're running around,
Like chicken
pecking,
run.
and yeah, wishing they could actually fly.
Yeah. I really want to. This reminds me. I don't know what it is about being Catholic. It just new hobbies I want to try. One of them is hunting. I want to go hunting.
Oh, we went this year. We didn't get anything because my dad and I suck at hunting.
Yeah.
But
I've always wanted
Yeah.
to hunt. I
That's what
want
we
to
wanna do for
do
meat.
is hunt the turkey that I'm going to eat for Thanksgiving.
oh, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool. Probably be a little
Bro,
gamey.
come up to Montrose. We got turkey
I'm down.
everywhere.
I'm
Everywhere.
down.
When we were elk hunting, we saw plenty of turkey and no elk. So it was really upsetting.
But I also would love to go like elk hunting.
Yeah,
and-
we're gonna,
and just try it and do it in a way that's like. It just seems like respectful. I'm not a huge trophy hunter.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
wanna- I don't
totally.
know if I don't want to. I
Sure.
don't think. But I would just love to shoot it and kill
Hunting
it,
is
hunt it for meat.
conservation.
Oh, I fully am
And
on board with that.
even trophy hunting actually, like
in certain countries,
yeah,
I learned about this.
Yeah, even
In
trophy
Africa.
hunting can be, and like obviously even with the elk, like some people want to go after a big buck, and that's fine because they're still conserving, you know, like that's part of that population. Yeah, we went after cows this year, and we actually got really
Wait,
unlucky.
you hunted cows?
Cow elk, like the female.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
like seeing you like dairy cows. I'm
Hey,
like,
farmer
that's so
Derek has a
unfair.
new cow.
Like, bro, why are you hunting the
Cow
most,
elk.
like,
So the
docile
males are the
beast?
bull elk, and the cow is
That's funny.
the female elk. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So my dad and I
Well,
were like
you know.
walking up this ridge, and we're like, we see tracks everywhere and poop everywhere. We're like, oh my god, we're gonna turn a corner and just see a field of elk. And then we get all the way to the top of this ridge, and then we get the binoculars out, and we're like looking around. And my dad goes, oh my goodness. And I go, what? And he like hands me the binoculars, and I look not on like there's this ridge and then the valley, and on the other side there's a field with like 100 elk in it, and that was all private property, so we couldn't go. there. And we're like, oh, so they were here, like yesterday or earlier this morning,
yeah, yeah.
and then like by the time we had shown up, they had actually gone down in the valley and then up. So we're like staring at them, and we're like,
And you can't reach them.
can't do this.
Some
Yeah,
dude's
so we got
yard.
skunked, but that's Gina and I want to hunt elk for the meat, cause like you take
I've
down
never
one
tried elk
elk,
meat.
it's really good.
Is it?
It's really good. Yeah. So where we live in Colorado, I wouldn't hunt deer because they eat a lot of sagebrush, so they taste really gamey and really sagey. Whereas like where Gina's family lives in Ohio, they don't have elk. The deer are mostly eating like farmers' crops, so they're eating like corn. So
That
it's
tastes pretty
it's like, yeah, it's like steak.
That's funny.
But our elk are that way. The elk meat is so good. It's really weird. It like our neighbors gave us some, and we like my dad, his neighbors gave us some, and some steaks, and we had like some elk steak, and we cooked them up, and there's something about like meat like that, especially that was like out there surviving in the
Yeah.
thick of it, eating like raw stuff, like
Yeah.
real grotesque stuff that
Right.
your stomach would be like, what is this? And you eat it, and like something carnal activates in you, like the protein density of it alone.
You're just like,
And I ate it, and I felt that.
Popeye.
I'm like, I felt like a caveman instinct. Just like I was like salivating at the mouth, like this is like different, you know, like it hits different than like a steak. And I was like, I thought it was crazy until we gave Angus some, my parents' dog.
Oh, yeah.
Because like we'll give him meat, and he's like, oh, meat's really good. We gave him some of this elk steak, and his eyes got like this wide, and he started drooling all the way to the floor. Like it like activated the wolf
Right.
within.
He's like, this is what
like
I knew.
his ancestral wolf was like, whoa, 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 whoa. He was just, I mean, I'm not kidding. Like he kind of drools a little bit, but like he was like all the way to the floor.
Waterfalling. That's so funny.
His eyes were dinner plates. So
That's so funny.
yeah. We want to get more into it. Like this year,
I
we
would
just
totally
kinda,
do a hunting trip with you.
Dude, let's do it.
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
I don't know. I know nothing. I own nothing.
We don't either. So we'll get someone who knows
Should we do
something.
some bow hunting? Just like
Stephen bow hunts. Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
That'd be
His
cool.
dad took down a really nice elk this year, I think.
With a bow? That is so cool.
Here's the thing: with a gun, you can be far away.
Sure.
With a bow, you have to get close, which means you have to be
way harder.
You have to be sneakier, and you cannot smell like a human.
Oh, whoa. So you...
They smell you from a long ways away. So you got to get elk stinky fast. You know what I mean? Like you can't be running around smelling like In-N-Out burger.
Oof, you're right.
I don't know. Bow hunting is an enigma to me. I know a lot of people that do it, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. Let me kill a couple with a gun first, because I want meat in my freezer. Yeah.
Would you mount? Would you have a?
I don't know that I would, mostly for space. I see the appeal in it though, because I will say, like, as much as it's like you need to respect the animal, that's true. There is also this like, we took that down, and that's freaking cool.
You're right. It's a trophy.
Yeah.
It's a remembrance of what happened. Yeah.
And even like there's something about like, I don't know, it's so different to be like, oh, I'm hungry for meat. Let me go to Kroger and get my prepackaged steak.
Right.
Then like, I'm going to go walk around in the woods and look at elk shit and then find one and then kill it and then butcher it and eat it. Like, the way in which that provides food for your family is so much more real than like swiping a debit card with your little number in your bank account going down at Trader Joe's. Yeah, and then getting handed a meat package with a perfectly cut steak that they like infused red dye into or whatever. Yeah, it's funny. I will say that's one thing I love about where we live is like we get to see the agriculture but also the wildlife so much that I feel very connected to like the things that we ingest.
Yeah.
And it makes me hate eating at Kroger. Or like from the grocery store. Like I wish I could just buy. Are these blinds coming in?
Yeah.
They're trying again.
Anyway.
All right. Well, I think we're pretty long runtime here, but yeah. Any
enjoyed this, man.
Any other final thoughts or things you wanna?
There was a quote from Scott Hahn that it was funny. I thought of it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe not really relevant right now, but. He said this one time in a debate, and I loved it. He said, God opposes the proud, even when they're right.
Ooh, that is good.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows, because it really shows the heart of God. And it just seems, I don't know, ever since...
God opposes these blinds, that's for sure. They don't work.
I just say I am blown away by the character of God every day. It's so good. He is so good, and you can trust Him with everything, and you can trust Him with your entire being for the rest of your life, for all eternity. That's how good He is.
This is the beauty of worshiping a Trinitarian God who Himself is love.
Yeah, you're right.
He's not
self-effusive. He's just giving of Himself.
His self-definition is love, like. And obviously, you could say he's all powerful and all that, but it's not like that's his primary identifier that he chooses. You know, I mean, not that he is who he is, but yeah, he is love. Like,
literally.
Yeah.
It comes from Him. So, I'm just blown away by that, and the Catholic tradition has revealed to me that and more. So.
Yeah, it makes it more. It unveils the reality of it. In a lot of ways, in a connectable way too. Yeah.
In a way that's challenging, because it's deep. God is not comprehensible. You can't comprehend God, but you can certainly know Him. So it's in a way that's challenging yet intimate at the same time. You know? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's transformative, relatable, all the things. All the things. Right. Oh man, I love you, brother.
I love you too, bro.
So fun. This is so fun because Aaron, like I said, Aaron and I, we talk on the phone all the time. We hung out all the time when I lived here. But it's so good, like, to be away and talk on the phone and see each other in person and have these conversations. Man. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for being on my show. We've been trying to do this forever. We could have done it over Zoom, and I'm like, no.
Nah, I like this.
You gotta.
This is better.
Gotta have the face-to-face conversation. So yeah. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, man.
That was cool.
Anytime.
Yeah. We'll have to have you back on to talk about your studies, because I think
Absolutely.
that would be a
I'd love
really
to.
cool episode. I think
love
whenever
to.
there's someone that I have on that like was a convert or has had like a reversion or whatever, I like to start there. But then if we do, when we do more
Absolutely.
episodes,
I'd love to talk about
maybe in the middle
faith
of an
and-
elk hunt. Like, I
you
know there's elk
imagine?
over there, but we got to
Hold on, I
pause
got
and
a really
record
good
this
question.
episode. Yeah.
You're like setting up a tripod.
we're like filming and they like walk behind us and like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
They're gonna
like
be
they're in the background.
yeah, it's just like what are they talking
Oh,
about?
hold on.
Yes.
Anyway,
That would be a good like that would get a lot of views probably.
they would, yeah.
Catholic podcast discussion goes viral with elk takedown.
Elk takedown in the background.
Oh man, good stuff. Well, everybody, thank you for watching Drew the Catholic. And if this episode was, relatable, or there's someone you know that would benefit from watching it, please share it with them. Help spread the word.
Yes. Please.
We've been trying to really bring on, mostly because I don't have connections to like Catholic celebrities, but people have commented that it's been really beneficial to have like normal, Catholic. But it's been good to have like normal Catholics that don't get paid to be good at theology,
Right.
on talking about
Everyday
it, because it
Catholics.
proves like that we can all.
Yeah, I'm nobody, literally.
Yeah,
and I love it.
We might
just your
not be
average
as
Joe.
lettered or as have much notoriety as like Matt Fradd, or be as smart as Alex Plato or whatever, but we can be competent as Catholics in an everyday sphere, and that's really important.
Yes.
So
I thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why I love Saint Therese. You
Yeah.
can be normal, everyday person and be a
Right.
saint. Everybody is
Yeah.
made to be a saint.
exactly.
Everybody.
So we'll keep doing these interviews and stuff, and let us know what you thought, and if there's anything in
Yeah.
Aaron's story that you related to, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Nice.